Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, the United States government's All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office today released its historical records report on UFOs, and as we all expected, it's filled with lies and half truths. And basically, the bottom line is we're still being gaslighted by the government when it comes to the extraterrestrial slash non human intelligence presence on this planet. And we're just going to have to keep pushing forward. And actually, like I talked about yesterday, we're going to have to shame them. I want to go through this report, but before I do, I just want to go through a couple of reactions from people in the UFO community, like Klaus on Twitter has pointed out with regard to this 63-page report. He states there is not a single mention of, quote, non-human intelligence, end quote, in the AARO historical report. There is a reason that very precise language was used in the UAP Disclosure Act instead of extraterrestrial. As we all know, Congress in a lot of its in the things that it's been trying to pass, and actually with regard to UFO disclosure, they include extraterrestrial and non-human intelligence. I'm of the belief that the people, the gatekeepers, they realize that it really can't be said. They probably understand that these things are extraterrestrial. The craft that they have recovered, the beings the bodies that they have recovered, they understand that it's extraterrestrial, but they don't have that proof. They could say it's, it could be it's non-human. We don't know where it's from. It could be from Earth here. Maybe they're living under the ocean. This could be like a game of semantics that's going on. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. But whatever the case, we know that they're lying. They're not telling the truth about this. Lou Elizondo provided an exclusive quote to the Good Trouble show with Matt Ford, and he wrote, "It is inconceivable that the Pentagon continues to go down this road of obfuscation and denial. Our adversaries have already stated for the record that they have their own UAP programs. Is this not important to the Pentagon? This report is not only inaccurate, but also misleading in many of its assertions. Furthermore, this is yet another example of a long list of missteps by the Pentagon in recent history. It's a sad day for democracy when the American public is being fed misinformation under the guise of truthfulness and transparency." Yeah, I have to agree with Lou on that one, because that's exactly what this is. We're going to go through the report here in a little bit, and I'm going to hit some of the points in there. But, for the most part, this report is nonsense. And, I could actually, there's so much lying going on in this thing that I could do a podcast every single day for like the next 3 months on this thing, and with a new subject to tackle. That's how much there's in here. But we're not going to do that, of course. We're just going to have to demand that they tell the truth and shame them with facts, and say what you're saying. For instance, what you're saying about Roswell is absurd, and this is why. But anyway, let's get into the report here. We'll start with there's an introduction. We'll get into that a little bit. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. Of course, it's 63 pages. I just want to go through some of the aspects in here, and then just point out on why it's not true. It says here, since 1945, the United States government has funded and supported UAP investigations with the goal of determining whether UAP represented a flight safety risk, technological leaps by competitor nations, or evidence of off-world technology under intelligent control. These investigations were managed and implemented by a range of experts, scientists, academics, military, and intelligence officials under differing leaders, all of whom held their own perspectives that led them to particular conclusions on the origins of UAP. However, they all had in common the belief that UAP represented an unknown and therefore theoretically posed a potential threat of indeterminate nature. AARO's mission is similar to that of these earlier organizations. AARO methodology applies both the scientific method and intelligence analysis tradecraft to identify and help mitigate risks UAP may pose to domain safety, and to discover, characterize, and attribute potential competitor technological systems. A consistent, and this is where it gets into this the popular culture kind of arguments, where they try to make it seem like it's based on, people get these ideas from monster movies. That's why they believe in it, science fiction movies, things like that. It says here, a consistent theme in popular culture involves a particularly persistent narrative that the United States government, or a secretive organization within it, recovered several off-world spacecraft and extraterrestrial biological remains, that it operates a program or programs to reverse engineer the recovered technology, and that it has conspired since the 1940s to keep this effort hidden from the United States Congress and the American people. Well, that theme, let me just tell you something. That theme is based on facts, though. Facts that have been compiled by many researchers over a very long period of time, interviewing a variety of different people, right? That's why that theme exists, because there's evidence to show that it's a reality. That's why. But AARO dismisses all of this. It says here, AARO recognizes that many people sincerely hold versions of these beliefs, which are based on their perception of past experiences, the experiences of others whom they trust, or media and online outlets they believe to be sources of credible and verifiable information. The proliferation of television programs, books, movies, and the vast amount of internet and social media content centered on UAP-related topics most likely has influenced the public conversation on this topic and reinforced these beliefs within some sections of the population. Like, this is, of course, that some people are going to be influenced by things that they see on TV, but other people aren't. Some people are just living their lives, right? And then they come across something, or they're part of some military program that, and they encounter one of these things, or they come across one of these things somehow, and then they know. Then the reality is, life changes for them because they understand that they're not alone in the universe. But anyway, it says the goal of this report is not to prove or disprove any particular belief set, but rather to use a rigorous analytic and scientific approach to investigate past United States government-sponsored UAP investigation efforts and the claims made by interviewees that the United States government and various contractors have recovered and are hiding off-world technology and biological material. No, the goal of this report is to gaslight the public, to lie to the public. That's the intention of this report. It's to tamp it back down. What they're trying to do is they're trying to put Pandora back into the box here. Anyway, it says here, AARO has approached this project with the widest possible aperture, thoroughly investigating these assertions and claims without particular preconceived conclusion or hypothesis. I don't believe that one bit. And in fact, I don't believe that they did any rigorous investigation, as you will see, as some of this report shows us that they did not. It says here, AARO is committed to reaching conclusions based on empirical evidence. No, AARO is committed to reaching a preconceived conclusion. They already knew where they had to go, and this is the fruits of that labor. That's what this is. This is a lie. When they're telling you that they do not know about this this alien non-human intelligence presence, they're lying to you. That's what's going on here. This is a lie, and they're doing it again. They've been doing it for decades, and they're doing it again. This is just another example of this. Make no mistake, that's what's happening here. I just want people need to understand this. And anyway, we'll get into some of this as we go through, and I will provide some evidence that refutes what they're saying here. And then they have this executive summary, and we'll hit some of these here. It says, AARO found no evidence that any United States government investigation, academic-sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed that any sighting of a UAP represented extraterrestrial technology. Again, I just want to point out, they're just saying extraterrestrial. Is this a game of semantics? Is that what's going on here? They're not saying non-human intelligence. They're not saying extraterrestrial / non-human intelligence technology. They're not saying that. They're just saying extraterrestrial. And, if it is a game of semantics, then they could say, well, we don't know what it is. We were telling the truth in that report. Like when the truth finally does come out, they could say, yeah, we were telling the truth in that report, but we didn't know it was extraterrestrial. For all we know, these things were here the whole time and they were under the ocean or something. That's very possible. That's the reason for this. I personally think it's extraterrestrial, and I'm sure that they think that too, but they can get away with it because they probably can't prove it. They probably can't. How could you? Common sense will tell you that, oh yeah, this is extraterrestrial. This ain't from here, right? This couldn't be from here. But they can't be 100% certain of that. Nobody really could, right? If the aliens ain't coming down here and showing you absolute proof that, yeah, we're from the Zeta Reticuli here. That's not happening. I don't see how that would be happening. Anyway, here it goes on. It says, all investigative efforts at all levels of classification concluded that most sightings were ordinary objects and phenomena and the result of misidentification. Although not the focus of this report, it is worthwhile to note that all official foreign UAP investigatory efforts to date have reached the same general conclusions as United States government investigations. Well, of course, why wouldn't they? They're all in the same. They're all the same purpose is to obfuscate and lie to the public about this. They don't want to tell the public the truth about this, and they're all in on it together, right? I mean, the United States government and its allies, right? They know about this. There's segments within all these governments. I'm sure there's a segment within the UK that knows exactly what's going on, and they share information back and forth with the United States government. That's, of course, it's the same. Of course, they have their same liars in those other countries as we have here. It goes on here. It says, although many UAP reports remain unsolved or unidentified, AARO assesses that if more and better quality data were available, most of these cases also could be identified and resolved as ordinary objects or phenomena. Sensors, of course, they always love to say that. Yeah, if we had more information, we'd be able to show you that it's all natural. It's prosaic. They always like to say that. It says here, sensors and visual observations are imperfect. The vast majority of cases lack actionable data, or the data available is limited or of poor quality. Resources and staffing for these programs largely have been irregular and sporadic, challenging investigatory efforts and hindering effective knowledge transfer. The vast majority of reports almost certainly are the result of misidentification and a direct consequence of the lack of domain awareness. There is a direct correlation between the amount and quality of available information on a case with the ability to conclusively resolve it. And I just want to also, before I continue here, I just want to point out here that 2 days ago, AARO, the Pentagon had a closed press briefing with only select members of the media, and as I talked about the other day, I said it was going to be the ones who always carry the Pentagon's water, and I was right. It was the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, Politico. They were the handful, and they all have their stories out today, right? Basically, again, towing the Pentagon line, just like we suspected was going to happen. They're complicit. They basically took this executive summary and they just formed their own little articles out of it without really doing any other investigation. They don't have their reporters on this. They don't realize either they're really stupid or they're really lazy or they're complicit in some other way. I don't know, but they're not doing their job. These mainstream news outlets, these legacy news outlets, they're not doing their job. They're not. They're just not. They have basically what they did. They're serving as press relations for the Pentagon when it comes to this subject. That's what they're doing. They're just towing the line. They're not doing any further investigation. They're not asking any hard questions. That's why news outlets like News Nation, they weren't invited to this, right? That's why. The Pentagon doesn't want to be asked those hard questions. They don't want that. No. Don't go there. Don't go there. Just write what we tell you. Just write what we tell you. And the Washington Post says, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anyway, continuing here, it says, AARO found no empirical evidence for claims that the United States government and private companies have been reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology. AARO determined, based on all information provided to date, that claims involving specific people, known locations, technological tests, and documents allegedly involved in or related to the reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology are inaccurate. Additional claims will be addressed in Volume 2. Yeah, there's going to be another volume of lies. Volume 2, this time it's personal, AARO successfully located the United States government and industry programs, officials, companies, executives, and documents identified by interviewees. These are the whistleblowers, apparently, that went to AARO, the ones that Sean Kirkpatrick said they never heard from. So what's going on here? Anyway, in many cases, the interviewees named authentic United States government classified programs well known and understood to those appropriately access to them in the executive branch and legislative branch. However, the interviewees mistakenly associated these authentic United States government programs with alien and extraterrestrial activity. AARO has reached the following high confidence conclusions. Remember that. They're saying they've reached the following high confidence conclusions, but they really don't offer any evidence to back up what they're saying there. They're just making statements. Let me offer a high confidence conclusion. AARO's lying. The government's still lying to you. There is a presence on this planet that's not human, that is more technologically advanced than we are. That's my high confidence conclusion. But anyway, let's talk about AARO's high confidence conclusions related to UAP non-disclosure agreements. AARO has found no evidence of any authentic UAP-related non-disclosure agreement or other evidence threatening death or violence for disclosing UAP information. Later on, though, it does point out that in the NDAs, the standard NDAs, it does threaten death. Another one here. It says a CIA official allegedly managed UAP experimentation. The named former CIA official was not involved in the movement of extraterrestrial technology. The same former CIA officer signed a memo rejecting a claim made by interviewees that he managed the movement of an experimentation on off-world technology. Okay, so they went to some guy and the CIA official who allegedly managed UAP experimentation, and the guy says, they asked him, did you do that? Is that true? No. Will you sign an affidavit to that effect? Yeah, sure, no problem. There you go. See? Done. I'm going to fast forward here. This is a good one. Named companies allegedly experimenting on alien technology. It says this. AARO has found no evidence that U.S. companies ever possessed off-world technology. The executives, scientists, and chief technology officers of the companies named by interviewees met with the director of AARO and denied on the record that they have ever recovered, possessed, or engaged in reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology. So, obviously, you see what happened here. It's very simple. Kirkpatrick calls him up. We heard that you're experimenting with alien technology. Is that true? Could you come on over to the office and talk about that? Sure, no problem, Sean. I'll be right over. So is that true what they're saying? Nah. Would you sign a document to that effect? Sure. Let's move on to the next one. That's how this is being done. Of course, as you have to keep in mind, AARO was set up half-assed in the first place. You have basically the Department of Defense, which is responsible for this cover-up, right? The secret group that's in there, that's who's responsible for it. They picked Kirkpatrick to lead it. So here's what we get. Later on, it says, AARO assesses that UAP sightings and reports of these sightings to United States government organizations and claims that some UAP constitute extraterrestrial craft and that the United States government has secured and is experimenting on extraterrestrial technology have been influenced by a range of cultural, political, and technological factors. And then it goes on to say, AARO bases this conclusion on the following factors. The aggregate findings of all United States government investigations to date have not found even one case of UAP representing off-world technology. Well, do you ever stop to think that they're just not sharing this with you? No, they probably did. They're just, again, they're towing the line. They're lying to us. That's what's going on here. None of the programs mentioned by interviewees are UAP reverse engineering programs, and all the authentic programs have been properly notified and reported to Congress through the Congressional Defense and/or Intelligence Committees. AARO has no evidence for the United States government reverse engineering narrative provided by interviewees and has been able to disprove the majority of the interviewees' claims. Some claims are still under evaluation. Oh, so you're not really sure yet. So basically, how they disprove all of this stuff is again like we all suspected. They just contact these places who that's the interviewees tell them is where they're doing these things, right? Where they're reverse engineering these craft, right? And then they call them up and they say, "Is that what's going on?" No. Okay, thanks a lot. Good talking to you. Will you sign a paper to that? One more thing. Will you sign a paper to that effect? Sure, no problem. Wink, wink. Let's continue here. Goes on to say, it says, AARO assesses that some portion of sightings since the 1940s have represented misidentification of never-before-seen experimental and operational space, rocket, and air systems, including stealth technologies and the proliferation of drone platforms. It says here, from the 1940s to the 1960s especially, the United States witnessed a boom in experimental technologies driven by World War II and the Cold War. I am certain, like if you look at some of the pictures that were taken back in those days by different people who were lucky enough to get the pictures taken, like for instance the McMinnville picture, that doesn't look like something that anybody on this planet was developing. That doesn't look like that to me at all. They're lying. Again, this is just a big joke. This whole report is a big joke. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole thing today. I'm sure there's going to be other things that I'll talk about in other upcoming podcasts down the road. But what I really want to focus on here today is on page 21. We're going to fast forward to page 21 here and talk about Roswell. They do talk about the Roswell case. Again, this is the fifth time now that we've heard from the United States government with regard to Roswell, and basically it's just a regurgitation of what was stated in the past. That's all this is. They didn't really do anything. They have not investigated. They're basing their research on things that that were released by the Air Force back in the 90s. That's what this is. But anyway, it goes here. It starts off Roswell investigations / inquiries 1992 to 2001. We'll skip forward here. It says in 1993, Congressman Stephen Schiff made inquiries about the Roswell incident to the Department of Defense. The Roswell incident refers to the July 1947 recovery of metallic and rubber debris from a crashed military balloon near Roswell Army Airfield field personnel that sparked conspiracy theories and claims that the debris was from an alien spaceship and part of a United States government cover-up. Okay. For one thing, balloons don't crash. That's a lie right there. How come? Where's the pictures of the crash site? By the way, how come we never saw pictures of this balloon crash site? I'm sure they have them on file. Oh, that's right. All the records from Roswell from 1946 till about like 1949 disappeared when the General Accounting Office investigated this back in the 90s. All the records from Roswell. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. But all those records disappeared. They don't mention that, by the way, in this regurgitation. They don't mention that at all. They're just saying again that it's a crashed military balloon and metallic and rubber debris. That the top intelligence officer, Jesse Marcel, back in 1947, top intelligence officer at Roswell Army Air Base, back in 1947, the only place in the world where they had the bomb, right? That he mistook balloon material for something that was off this world, that was out of this world. That's what they're trying to tell you. They don't even mention Jesse Marcel's name, nor any of the other witnesses at all in this report. That's because they're lying about it. Anyway, continuing here, it says... metallic and rubber debris from a crashed military balloon near Roswell Army Airfield personnel that sparked conspiracy theories and claims that the debris was from an alien spaceship and part of a United States government cover-up. Yeah, because it was part of a cover-up. It was from an alien craft. There's no doubt about it. Anybody who does the research knows this, and they know that this whole balloon dummy story is bogus. It's bogus. Anyway, it says here that Schiff asked the General Accounting Office, subsequently renamed the Government Accountability Office, to determine the requirements for reporting air accidents such as the crash near Roswell and to identify any government records concerning the Roswell crash. The United States Air Force conducted a systematic search of numerous archives and records centers in support of GAO's audit of Roswell. As part of this review, the Air Force also interviewed numerous people who may have had knowledge of the events. Secretary of the Air Force Sheila Widnall released them from any security obligations that may have restricted the sharing of information. The United States Air Force then published the Roswell Report in 1995, which included the report of the U.S. Air Force research regarding the Roswell incident by Richard Weaver, who was a disinformation agent, and the synopsis of balloon research findings by Lieutenant James McAndrew. It says here the results. The report stated that the United States Air Force research did not locate or develop any information that indicated the Roswell incident was a UFO event, nor was there any cover-up by the United States government. Rather, the materials recovered near Roswell were consistent with the balloon of this type used in the then classified Project Mogul. No records showed any evidence that the United States government recovered aliens or extraterrestrial material. Okay, let me just stop there before we continue. They don't mention this, though, okay? This is from Roswell, The Ultimate Cold Case Closed by Thomas Carey and Donald Schmidt. Let's go here to page 147. According to the GAO report, which was released in the mid-1990s, it states all Roswell Army airfield records from the crucial period in question had been inexplicably eliminated. These included Roswell Army Airfield administrative records from March 1945 through December 1949, as well as outgoing messages from October 1946 through December 1949. How convenient. How convenient. And how convenient that it's not even listed here in this report from AARO today, this live-filled report. Anyway, it goes on to say the United States Air Force subsequently published a follow-on report in 1997, the Roswell Report Case Closed, with additional materials and analysis which supported its conclusion that the debris recovered near Roswell was from the U.S. Army's Air Force balloon-borne program. This is the book that they're talking about right here. Let me pull it up for you so you can see it. It's the Roswell Report Case Closed by the Air Force. This was released in 1997. This is where they talked about dummies for the first time. It says here, the alleged alien bodies reported by some in the New Mexico desert were test dummies that were carried aloft by U.S. Army Air Force high-altitude balloons for scientific research. And so, but they're not mentioning this here because they don't want they don't want to, because this is embarrassing. Those tests, they took place actually from 1953 to 1959, from in 1953 they were exclusively at White Sands Missile Base in New Mexico, which isn't anywhere near Roswell. So that's where they were taking place. So it was years later. So they not only they're trying to tell you that people mistook alien bodies in 1947 to dummies that were dropped from high altitudes during the 1950s. Okay, they're basically telling you that it's time traveling dummies. We'll get into that in a second. Then it goes on. It says reports of military units that allegedly recovered a flying saucer and its crew were descriptions of Air Force personnel engaged in the dummy recovery operations. Claims of alien bodies at the Roswell Army Air Force Hospital were most likely the result of the conflation of two separate incidents. 1956 KC-97 aircraft accident in which 11 Air Force members lost their lives, and a 1959 manned balloon mishap in which 2 Air Force pilots were injured. So all these witnesses have made mistakes. Now, a lot of these witnesses weren't even in Roswell during these periods of time that they're talking about. In fact, most of them weren't. So they're trying to say that people mistook these people that got killed in an air crash at Roswell Army Airfield in 1956, these 11 Air Force members, they mistook that for dead alien bodies, these 11 guys. That's what they're trying to do. And then this other one, then you're even 12 years after the 1959, 12 years after the Roswell incident, a manned balloon mishap where there was 2 Air Force pilots that were injured. That accounts for the alien bodies. That's what they're trying to make people believe. They're still doing it. They're doing it again. They're telling you this lie again. Now it's AARO doing it. Then it goes on to say the GAO's 1995 report on the results of its investigation found that the United States Army Air Force regulations in 1947 required that air accident reports be maintained permanently. 4 air accidents were reported by the Army Air Force in New Mexico during July 1947. All involved military aircraft and occurred after July 8, 1947, the date the Roswell Army Airfield Public Information Office first reported the crash and recovery of a flying disc near Roswell. The military reported no air accidents in New Mexico that month. United States Air Force officials reported to the General Accounting Office that there was no requirement to prepare a report on the crash of a balloon in 1947. Okay, so it's all that's their little bid on Roswell. But again, the other records that they're not mentioning here, the ones that were missing, stolen, destroyed, whatever. It says here, this is what the GAO said, it is my understanding that these outgoing messages were permanent records which should never have been destroyed. The GAO could not identify who destroyed the messages or why, lamented the late Schiff. We are left to believe and accept that this is what Carey and Schmidt write. We are left to believe and accept that the first and only atomic bomb base in the world in 1947 existed in a vacuum, and important documentation pertaining to its daily functioning and exercises in the defense of our country were of no historic or strategic value and were casually discarded. There's more to it. You got people the mainstream news, the ones that showed up at this press briefing, the ones who were invited. They need to pick up these books and do some research on this, because they look really stupid right now by writing these stories and basically covering for the Pentagon still after all this time. You're really looking dumb, and I'm gonna make you look even dumber now. Okay, let's talk about some of the witnesses here, okay? The witnesses to Roswell. I talk about this all. Here's another book from Carey and Schmidt. These guys actually did research over decades and met with a whole bunch of different military personnel, in addition to civilians who were part of this event back in 1947. There was this one guy, Eli Benjamin. He was a private back then at the time, and he didn't want to talk about this in the 1990s when they were first going, when investigators wanted to talk to him. His wife, he had talked to his wife about it, and his wife had mentioned things to investigators that her husband knows certain things, but Benjamin himself didn't want to talk about this. But after over about a dozen times of investigators reaching out to him, he finally did come clean. And it says here from the book, it says in July of 1947, Eli Benjamin was a private first class with the 390th ASS at the Roswell Army Airfield. He possessed a top secret clearance, and Benjamin was authorized to provide security support for the most highly classified operations of the 509th Bomb Group. In the morning of Monday, July 7th, 1947, found Benjamin walking back to his barracks after a night of guard duty on the flight line, followed by breakfast at the Chow Hall. Just minutes away, sleep was awaiting him. Something's going on, he thought to himself as he stood at attention and saluted the playing of the national anthem and the morning flag-raising ritual at base headquarters on the south end of the Esplanade. He knew that the base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, normally held his weekly staff meetings on Tuesday mornings, but on this day, Benjamin thought there were way too many staff cars and other vehicles parked in the headquarters parking lot for a regular staff meeting. When Benjamin finally arrived at his barracks, word was given to my squadron to be on the alert for special duty, he said. And then later on, the word finally found Benjamin. Private Benjamin says, "Benjamin, get your gun and report to hangar P3 for guard duty." And this is what Benjamin said. This is the following account right from Benjamin's mouth, from Eli Benjamin's mouth. He says, "I got myself ready, got my gun, and reported to the big hangar as ordered. As near as I can recall, it was late afternoon or early evening at this time." And this was on July 7th, 1947. "While looking for my officer in charge to get instructions for duties at the hangar, I came upon a commotion taking place at the main entrance to the hangar. Some MPs were trying to subdue an out-of-control officer who, among other things, appeared to be drunk as a skunk. I found out later that the officer in question was from my squadron and was the very officer to whom I was to report for a special detail. This officer, whose name I cannot now recall, was to have overseen the transfer of several top-secret items from the big hangar to the base hospital, and I was there to help escort the transfer. I was later told that he had been to the crash site and had seen the ship. When this officer reported to the hangar and saw the small bodies, it was apparently too much for him to handle, and he just lost it. At this point, having just arrived myself, a major or lieutenant colonel came out of the hangar, looked over the situation, and pointed to me. 'You, come over here,' he said. 'You're now in charge of this detail. Get these over to the base hospital.' He then pointed to 3 or 4 gurneys inside the hangar, each of which had something on it that was covered by a sheet. On one of the gurneys, whatever was under the sheet appeared to me to be moving. I saluted my acceptance and understanding of his order and instructed the rest of the men in the detail to load the gurneys with their payload into the back of a truck that had just arrived for the purpose. Up to this point, I had no idea what we were transporting to the hospital. I would know soon enough, however. As the men were loading the truck, one of the gurneys slipped during the handoff, and the sheet covering it fell away, revealing the grayish face and swollen, hairless head of a species that I realized was not human. My orders were to deliver these to the base hospital's emergency room and remain there until relieved." That's just one guy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of guys like this. When you read these books, there's a whole bunch of people that went on the record with this. But here's one. This was just a citizen, Frankie. She has passed on, Frankie Dwyer Rao. She was threatened. She was the daughter of the fire chief at the time, and when after she was stopped at the dentist, she stopped at the firehouse and waiting for her dad to give her a ride home, and there was a police officer showed up with a piece of the wreckage that he had. It was just like you could crumble it up in your hand and it would straighten right back out again. She says this. She says, while she was waiting, a highway patrol officer by the name of Robert Scroggins came into the station with a mischievous look on his face. "Hey guys, want to see something?" Scroggins reached into his pocket and took out something that he wadded up in his hand. "Watch this," he said. He then held his hand out about a foot over a nearby table and opened it. Something silvery fell from his hand to the surface on the table without a sound. Then, as if by magic, it spread out like quicksilver into a small, thin, irregular sheet of something in 1 or 2 seconds. Everyone who was there that day, including Frankie Dwyer, had a chance at it. It could not be cut with scissors, scratched, burned, or permanently creased. No one there could figure out what it was. Scroggins said that he had gotten the piece from someone in Corona. A day or 2 later, Frankie Dwyer was at home with her mother tending to chores when there was a hard knock on the door. The hard knock on the door was from an MP who showed up and threatened them. Basically told her that you did not see anything. You got that? If you say anything, not only will you be killed, but the rest of your family will be killed too. There's a big desert out there. No one will ever find you. She said that. She stuck to her guns till the day she died on that one. Let's talk. Here's who else we got here. How about this? Here's from page 198 of Witness to Roswell. As participants in the Roswell events of 1947 expire at an ever-increasing rate, it should be expected that we encounter more confessions of the deathbed variety as time passes, and such is indeed the case. Sarah Mounts, whose husband, Private Francis Frank Cassidy, was an MP in the 1395th Military Police Company at Roswell in 1947, relayed to us the information that her husband, during his final days in 1976, confessed to guarding Hangar P3 and seeing the bodies inside. And another woman, Wanda Lyda, told us that her husband, Corporal Robert Lyda, during the last remaining months of his life in 1995, finally told her of his involvement in the Roswell events of 1947. After seeing a program on TV that featured the Roswell incident, she at last asked him, "Well, dear, is it true?" He answered, "Well, I suppose it's time I should tell you. I've been meaning to tell you for a long time. It's true." And it says here, Lyda had been an MP with the 1395th at Roswell in 1947, and he confirmed to his wife that he was simply grabbed one day and told to report to hangar number 3. He was given a gun and told to stand guard at the hangar with other similarly marshaled base personnel. While on guard duty there, he waited for an opportunity to look inside the building. Lyda swore to his wife that he observed wreckage scattered about inside and a number of small bodies being prepared for shipment elsewhere. Asked if she believed her husband when he told her this, Wanda replied without hesitation or reservation, "Absolutely. He was telling me the truth when he knew he didn't have much longer." And there's a ton of other people in here. Melvin Brown, he was with K Squadron at the time of the incident. And he told his family when he was on his deathbed, he said, "It was approaching dusk when one other soldier and I were stationed in one of the ambulance trucks at the recovery site. Everything was being loaded onto trucks, and I couldn't understand why some of the trucks had ice or something in them. I did not understand what they wanted to keep cold. Our orders were not to look under the canvas tarp in the back. The moment we had a chance, I pulled back the covering. There were bodies, small bodies, and they had big heads and slanted eyes." And then, of course, there was the Walter Haut. He was the press officer at Roswell at the time, and he was the one who Colonel William Blanchard told him to send out the press release that the Army Air Force had recovered a flying disc. And what did he say? He said before leaving the base, this was after he had put out handed out the press release. He said before leaving the base, Colonel Blanchard, this was in an affidavit he signed a few years before he died. He says before leaving the base, Colonel Blanchard took me personally to Building 84, a B-29 hangar located on the east side of the tarmac. Upon first approaching the building, I observed that it was under heavy guard both outside and inside. Once inside, I was permitted from a safe distance to first observe the object just recovered north of town. It was approximately 12 to 15 feet in length, not quite as wide, about 6 feet high, and more of an egg shape. Lighting was poor, but its surface did appear metallic. No windows, portholes, wings, tail section, or landing gear were visible. Also from a distance, I was able to see a couple of bodies under a canvas tarpaulin. Only the heads extended beyond the covering, and I was not able to make out any features. The heads did appear larger than normal, and the contour of the canvas over the bodies suggested the size of a 10-year-old child. At a later date in Blanchard's office, he would extend his arm about 4 feet above the floor to indicate the height. And there's more to it. There's more. There's tons of witnesses like this. Tons of them. The mainstream news just fails to investigate this. They fail to report on this part. The Air Force is lying. This whole balloon and dummy stuff is a lie. There were so many different former military personnel that talked about this. And here's Jesse Marcel. Here's what he said. He was the top intelligence official at the time at Roswell. Here's what he said about it.
You couldn't even bend it. You couldn't bend it. Even with a sledgehammer would bounce off of it. So I knew that I had never seen anything like that before. And as of now, I don't know what it was. It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of. Because being an intelligence officer, I was familiar with just about all materials used in aircraft and in our air travel. This is nothing like that. It could not be. It could not have been.
Okay, so there you go. I mean, that's just a little portion of the witnesses. If you read these books, if you were to check, if the mainstream news were to pick up these books, and there's other books too about Roswell, well-researched books, you would know that the Air Force is lying about this. This whole balloon story, this whole dummy story, it's all nonsense. They're lying about it, and they're still lying about it. They lied again in this report. How could you sit back and do nothing about this? Anyway, I just want to talk about one more section of this dumb lie-filled report again. It says, this is a section later on page 30 of the new AARO report. It says here, no official UAP non-disclosure agreements discovered. It says here, in the conduct of this review and to meet the direction of section 1673 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023, AARO sent guidance and requests to the Department of Defense, intelligence community elements, the Department of Energy, and the Department of Homeland Security to review and provide any non-disclosure agreements pertaining to UAP or its previous names. To date, AARO personnel have not discovered or been notified of any NDAs that contain information related to UAP. Also, apart from the standard NDA language contained in Title 18, Section 794, describing the death penalty or jail time for illegally disclosing information relating to the national defense, AARO has not discovered any NDAs containing threats to interviewees for disclosing UAP-specific information. Okay, you haven't discovered these NDAs. Does that mean they don't exist? Do you think they're just going to, the secret control group's just going to hand them over to you? Like, how dumb do you think we are out here? We're not dumb. Anyway, it goes on here. It says, historically, most, if not all, NDAs contain standard language stating that the death penalty can be applied for the crime of disclosing classified information. It's Title 18, Section 794 is referenced in typical NDAs in several places in relation to the transmission of classified information. Whoever, with intent or reason to believe that it is to be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of a foreign nation, communicates, delivers, or transmits information relating to the national defense shall be punished by death or by imprisonment for any term of years or for life. Okay, there's a good enough reason. That's a pretty big reason right there for a lot of people to keep their mouths shut about this forever. And just because AARO couldn't find any of these NDAs that were signed by people that were brought into these programs doesn't mean they don't exist. They think that everyone's stupid out here. This is unacceptable. This whole report is unacceptable. This is not good enough. Not good enough. Our congressional leaders here need to do more. They need to do more. They need to start getting angrier about this and demanding, no, we don't accept this. We think you're lying. You got to come right out and say you're lying. This is not true. There's too much evidence with regard to Roswell. You got to tell the truth already. This is not true. I don't accept this. This is unacceptable. I don't believe it. That's what they got to do. The people in the Senate, the people in Congress, the President of the United States, they got to demand. They got to say, this is not true. We don't believe this. This is not unacceptable. It's not acceptable. People in the scientific community, even debunkers, everybody should be angry about this. We're being gaslighted. How could anybody with any sort of critical discernment look at all of this evidence that has been compiled and the research and say that this is true, that they put this document that they put out today is truthful? It's not. It's filled with lies. It's not acceptable. And I at some point it's going to be exposed for what it is. I mean, this is bogus. This is nonsense. It's a lie. They're gaslighting the world. They're gaslighting Americans. That's what they're doing. I believe these guys, these former military personnel that are mentioned in books like Witness to Roswell and Roswell: The Ultimate Cold Case Closed. I believe that those guys were true blue Americans who knew that something was going on. I don't think they were making stuff up on their deathbeds about this. They were telling the world the truth. The Air Force, meanwhile, all the records from Roswell just vanished. They got nothing. They made sure nobody saw those records because they knew there would be stuff in there that would tell a different story, that would the jig would have been up. So anybody with any sort of critical discernment, anybody who studies this knows that they're lying. And they're lied again about Roswell. This is the 5th time that they lied about. Actually, the first time they told the truth. They told the truth the first time. Then the next 4 stories they told, lies. Here's the 5th lie. Again, basically all it is a regurgitation of lies we've heard before. No investigation, but that's enough. As far as I was concerned, that closes the book on that. Unacceptable. And Sean Kirkpatrick, he should be ashamed of himself. Ashamed. Anybody that's associated with this report should be ashamed of themselves. It's an absolute disgrace, a disgrace. And any kind of reporter worth his salt should be, look yourself in the mirror tonight and say, did I really do a good job with this? These guys who put out their stories in the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN, did they really do a good job on this, or just letting the Pentagon slide again? All of them should be ashamed of themselves. Everyone should be ashamed of themselves that is connected with this report. And anybody who stands behind it and says, "Yeah, see, I've told you all along." I just want to point out one more thing that I saw on Twitter today. This was from Jason Colavito, a big-time debunker. Okay, and this is what he said. Actually, he made a comment. I had to respond to it, and I just couldn't let it stand. He goes, with regard to this new report, he said, pretty much what I and other researchers have said for years. It's a small group of paranormal enthusiasts who all know and work with each other, all growing out of the Skinwalker Ranch poltergeist hunt. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. Tries to roll this whole phenomenon, this whole issue and connect it to Skinwalker Ranch. This is much bigger than Skinwalker Ranch. This is such a lie. But anyway, I responded to him, are you really this obtuse, or is it an act? Because I don't know. What is it? But that's what you're getting from these debunkers. Should be ashamed of themselves. Anybody who looks at this and then looks at the research and that has been conducted by many people over the years. These debunkers don't do any research. They pontificate. Their research is proclamations. That's it, without any research. They should be ashamed of themselves. Anybody who's going to stand by this report and say, yeah, they nailed it. No, they didn't. They're lying to us again, gaslighting the whole country. It's a disgrace, folks. It's a disgrace. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.